The Vagabond's last gift had 37 orphan children on board, a failing fusion core, and less than 4 hours of oxygen left. And every single vessel in the evacuation fleet had just jumped to FTL, leaving them behind. Commander Elias Vance heard the order over the emergency channel. The fleet admiral's voice clipped and hollow. All remaining craft, disengage immediately. The Void Kraken has locked onto the thermal signature of the convoy. Repeat, disengage. No survivors expected. Vance's fingers froze over his own jump calculator. He wasn't on the gift. He was 17 light seconds away, strapped into a single-seat scout ship called the Needle, which had no life support for anyone but him and no cargo bay for refugees. But he could still see the orphan ship on his tactical display, a rust bucket colony transport that some desperate AI had christened with dark irony. 37 life signs, all children. The oldest was 14. The Void Kraken was already coiling its magnetic fields around the convoy's outer edge. Vance's squad leader, a Thraxian named Core with 3 hearts and 0 patience for human sentiment, broadcast on the tactical net. Scout 7, you have 30 seconds to comply with the withdrawal, or I will mark you as insubordinate and leave you for the Kraken myself. Core's ship had already spooled its drive. The other 9 scouts in the squadron winked out one by one, their FTL wakes leaving faint gravitational ripples that the Void Kraken would probably ignore. It wasn't hunting ships anymore. It was hunting heat, and the gift was a bonfire in a dark ocean. Vance killed his jump drive. He killed his running lights. He killed everything except passive sensors and a single encrypted text channel that he'd never told Fleet about. The message he sent wasn't to command. It was to a ghost. Lark, I know you're listening. I need a miracle in the next 2 minutes or I'm flying a scout ship into a Kraken's mouth with 37 kids watching. 3 heartbeats of silence. Then his console pinged with a response that should have been impossible. Lark's identifier code had been decommissioned after the Cerberus incident, and every record of her existence had been scrubbed by 3 different governments. Define miracle, Eli. I'm picky, Eli. He almost laughed. Almost. The gift's oxygen timer had just dropped to 3 hours and 41 minutes. The Kraken's magnetic field was now close enough that Vance could feel a faint vibration through the Needle's hull, like standing on train tracks while a locomotive screamed toward you from a mile away. I need you to spoof a fleet-wide thermal decoy, he whispered into his mic, knowing Lark's pirate-bred AI would parse it. Make the Kraken think the convoy split into 12 different vectors. Give me 20 minutes to get those kids onto something that isn't about to melt. Lark's response took 4 seconds. In those 4 seconds, the gift broadcast a desperate mayday on an open channel. A child's voice, maybe 11 years old, reciting their ship's registry number over and over because the adult crew had all been killed in the initial Kraken attack 3 days ago. The orphans had been flying themselves ever since, steering a death trap with duct tape and prayers. You're going to die, Eli, Lark finally said. But she said it the way a sister says it when she's already writing a plan. I'll give you 12 minutes, not 20, and when this is over, you owe me a new identity. The Kraken's not the only thing hunting me. Vance didn't ask what she meant. He'd learned years ago that Lark's secrets had teeth. He slammed his throttle forward. The Needle wasn't designed for atmospheric braking or heavy cargo towing. It was a knife, fast, sharp, and useless for anything except reconnaissance and running away. But Vance had grown up in the belt, flying salvage rigs that his father had kept together with welding patches and spite. He knew how to make a ship do things its engineers would call suicide. He matched velocity with the gift in 91 seconds, which was 9 seconds faster than his previous combat record. The orphan ship filled his cockpit canopy like a dying whale. Hull plating scorched by the Kraken's first pass, a slow leak venting atmosphere from the port cargo bay, and one of its 2 fusion reactors already cold. The remaining reactor was outputting at 112% and climbing. Vance didn't need a diagnostic to know that the core's magnetic containment was unraveling. When it went, it would take everything within 2 kilometers. Vagabond's last gift, this is Scout 7, he transmitted on civilian band. Do not adjust your course, I'm coming alongside for a conversation. He didn't have a plan for boarding. He didn't have a docking tube or an EVA suit that could fit a child. He had nothing except 37 terrified kids and a clock that was ticking backward. The voice that answered was the same one from the Mayday, young, trying to sound older. "Scout 7, we see you. Are you here to rescue us?" Vance closed his eyes for half a second, opened them. "What's your name, kid?" "Jenna. I'm the acting captain. The adults are all—" Her voice cracked. "They're gone. The Kraken's wave broke through the bridge viewport yesterday. It's just us now." 37 children. One of them was giving orders. One of them had probably tucked smaller kids into their crash couches and rationed the emergency oxygen and kept everyone from panicking long enough to send a mayday. Vance felt something twist in his chest that he'd been trying to ignore for 5 years. Since the last time he'd failed to save someone. "Jenna, listen carefully," he said. "I can't dock with you, my ship's too small, but I might be able to rig a tow. If I can match your magnetic signature and boost your reactor's output long enough to buy you some time—" "Our reactor's going to explode," Jenna said flatly. "We know. The engineering kids did the math. We have 3 hours and 27 minutes before the core breaches." A 12-year-old had done that math. Maybe younger. Vance looked at his own console. Lark had gone silent after her last message, but he could see the effects of her work. The Kraken's magnetic field had suddenly fractured, splitting into 12 ghost signatures that pulsed and shifted like a fever dream. The real Kraken, a creature of magnetized plasma and impossible hunger, was chasing shadows. But it would figure out the trick soon. Lark had bought him 12 minutes. He'd already used 2. "Okay," Vance said, and he heard his own voice change, dropping into the low, steady register he used when the odds were impossible, and he'd already decided to die anyway. "New plan. I'm going to transmit a link to your navigation computer. I need you to override every safety lock on your thrusters and point your ship directly at the nearest star." Silence from the gift. Then Jenna's voice, smaller. "That's toward the Kraken." "Yes, it is." "Why would we fly toward the thing that killed our families?" Vance pulled up a star chart. The nearest star was a red dwarf called Charybdis, appropriately named for a myth about a monster that swallowed ships whole. But between the gift and Charybdis lay a debris field. The remains of a battle from the last war, thousands of derelict ships and shattered stations drifting in a loose cloud 10 light minutes wide. If he could get the Orphan ship into that field, they could use the wreckage for cover. The Kraken hunted by thermal detection and magnetic distortion. If Vance could turn the debris into a maze of false signals, they might lose the creature long enough for a real rescue ship to arrive. Because real rescue ships are coming, he told himself. Fleet wouldn't just abandon children. He almost believed it. "We're going to hide," he told Jenna, "in the graveyard. The Kraken's fast, but it's not smart. We can confuse it if we move together. But I need you to trust me. Do you trust me?" The pause stretched so long that Vance thought the channel had died. When Jenna spoke again, her voice had hardened into something that sounded far too old for her face. "The last adults who told us to trust them were our parents. They said the evacuation would be fine. They put us on this ship and waved from the dock, and then the Kraken came, and now they're—" A breath. "I don't trust adults, but I trust that you're the only ship that stopped." Vance's throat closed. He transmitted the course correction. On his display, the gift's thrusters flared, clumsy, overcorrecting, clearly piloted by a child who'd learned how to fly from watching archived tutorials. But Jenna was good. Better than good. She was the kind of natural that the Academy would have recruited at 12. "Follow my lead," Vance said. "Stay as close as you can." And Jenna, "Yeah? If the reactor starts going critical early, I need you to evacuate everyone to the forward section. The bow has the thickest plating. It might survive a partial breach." "Might? Probably not," he admitted. "But I'll be right next to you. Whatever happens, you won't be alone." He didn't tell her that the Needle had no life support for 37 extra people. He didn't tell her that his scout ship's hull would vaporize in a core breach just as fast as the Gift's would. He didn't tell her that Lark's decoy was already starting to fray. He could see the real Kraken's magnetic field reforming on his sensors, a swirling vortex of charged particles the size of a small moon, and it had stopped chasing the ghosts. It was turning back toward the one real heat source in the sector, toward them, or D. The debris field was closer than Vance had hoped and far more dangerous than he'd expected. The war had ended 7 years ago, but the battle over Charybdis had been so violent that the wreckage hadn't stopped moving. Derelict cruisers tumbled end over end, their hulls studded with unexploded ordnance, and clouds of micro-shrapnel drifted in invisible sheets that could tear through a ship's hull like shrapnel through flesh. Vance threaded the needle through the first layer of debris with the kind of precision that made his teeth ache. Behind him, the gift followed his path with a 3-second delay, close enough to stay in his wake, far enough to avoid collisions when he had to juke around a spinning reactor core or a shredded bulkhead. "You're doing great, Jenna," he said. "Just keep your eyes on my exhaust trail. Don't look at the wrecks." "Some of them have bodies," she said quietly. "Floating inside, I can see them through the windows." Vance had seen the same thing. He didn't let his voice change. "Don't look," he repeated. "Look at me." The Kraken entered the debris field 2 minutes later. Vance felt it before his sensors confirmed it, a deep, resonant thrum that vibrated through the needle's hull like a plucked cello string. The creature was plasma and magnetism, a pseudo-life form that had evolved in the accretion disk of a black hole, and it moved through space like a thought, faster than light, hungrier than gravity, and utterly indifferent to the lives of carbon-based creatures. It didn't hate them. It didn't even notice them. All it saw was heat. All it wanted was fuel. And the gift was a feast. "Scout 7 to Lark," Vance transmitted on the encrypted channel. "Status on that miracle? Because the Kraken just figured out your decoy and it's coming through the debris field like a wrecking ball." Lark's response was fragmented, her voice crackling with interference that Vance didn't recognize as natural. "The decoy bought you 6 minutes, not 12. I'm sorry. Something's jamming me, something that isn't Fleet. Eli, you need to listen. There's a reason Fleet abandoned that ship. It's not just the Kraken." "What are you talking about?" "Those children. The Orphan ship. It wasn't a colony transport. It was a prison transport. 37 kids with neural conditioning chips in their heads. They were being shipped to a rehabilitation facility on the edge of human space, but the facility was shut down 6 months ago. No one was coming to meet them. No one was ever supposed to find out they existed." Vance's hands went cold on the controls. "Conditioning chips? For children? They're not ordinary kids, Eli. They're witnesses. Their families were part of a resistance cell that tried to overthrow the Colonial Council 7 years ago. The Council lost the war, but they didn't lose the prisoners. Those kids were slated for memory wipes and re-education. The Orphan ship was a ghost transport. Off the books, no registry, no destination. And when the Kraken attacked, Fleet saw a chance to clean up loose ends. The gift's reactor alarm chose that moment to escalate from amber to red. On his console, Vance watched the core temperature spike past every safety threshold. The children weren't just running out of oxygen anymore. They were riding a bomb. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked Lark. "Because you're the only person in the galaxy who'd be stupid enough to fly into a Kraken's mouth for a ship full of political prisoners. And because I just intercepted a Fleet transmission. They're not sending rescue ships. They're sending a kill shot, a spinal cannon cruiser that's going to vaporize the entire debris field in 40 minutes. Kraken, wreckage, children, and you. All of it. They want no witnesses, Eli. Not even ghosts." Vance looked at the gift through his cockpit canopy. He could see the forward viewport now, a cracked oval of trans-aluminum, and behind it, a cluster of small faces pressed against the glass. Children, watching him, waiting for him to save them. He had no life support for them, no cargo bay, no weapons, no reinforcements coming. He had a stolen scout ship, a pirate ghost on an encrypted channel, and 37 kids who'd already been betrayed by every adult who'd ever promised to protect them. "How long until the cruiser arrives?" Morty asked. 38 minutes. "And the core breach?" Jenna's math was off. Their engineer kid just recalculated 18 minutes. 18 minutes to do something impossible. 18 minutes to save children that the government wanted dead. 18 minutes before the Kraken, the cruiser, or the reactor killed them all. Vance keyed the civilian channel. Jenna, I need you to listen to me very carefully. The plan has changed. Changed how? He looked at the debris field, at the spinning wrecks, at the unexploded ordnance and the floating bodies in the clouds of micro-shrapnel that could cut a ship in half. Then he looked at the Kraken's magnetic field, which was now close enough to make his teeth buzz. We're not hiding anymore, he said. We're fighting. Jenna's voice went high and tight. Fighting? With what? We don't have guns. We don't have shields. We have a reactor that's going to blow up and a pilot who's flying a ship the size of a lifeboat. That's exactly what we're going to use, Vance said. Your reactor, my ship, and every piece of debris in this graveyard. He was already pulling up the debris field's composition data. Thousands of wrecks, most of them military, most of them still carrying fuel or munitions or both. The war had ended in a ceasefire, not a surrender, which meant that neither side had bothered to clean up the battlefield. It was a powder keg, and Vance was about to strike a match. Here's the truth, he said, speaking fast and low. Fleet isn't coming to save you. They never were. In about 40 minutes, a warship is going to arrive and destroy this entire sector. You, me, the Kraken, everything. That's the bad news. He waited for Jenna to scream or cry or fall apart. She didn't. She just said, "What's the good news?" The Kraken is a plasma-based life form. It feeds on heat and magnetic fields. If we can create a thermal event large enough, something that looks like a star-going supernova, the Kraken will dive straight into it. It won't be able to help itself. It's a feeding response, like a shark smelling blood. You want to blow something up, Jenna said. Something really big. I want to blow up this entire debris field, Vance corrected. Every ship, every fuel tank, every stray missile. I want to create a false supernova so bright that the Kraken flies into it and burns itself out. And I want to do it 17 seconds before that fleet cruiser arrives, so they fly straight into the aftermath and can't prove that anyone survived. Silence. Then Jenna laughed, a short, sharp sound that was half hysterical and half genuinely impressed. You're insane. Probably. How do we survive? Vance had been waiting for that question. He'd been running calculations since the moment Lark mentioned the cruiser, and the numbers were brutal. The Needle had a single emergency shuttle, a one-person escape pod that he'd never used, bolted to his hull like a parasite. It had life support for 4 hours. It had no engines, no navigation, and no heat shielding. Oh, but it could fit 37 children if they were small and if they didn't mind being stacked like firewood. I'm going to tow you to the edge of the blast radius, he said. When I give the signal, I want you to evacuate everyone into the forward section of your ship. Seal the bulkheads. Brace for impact. I'm going to detonate the debris field from a safe distance, and the shockwave will push your ship clear of the worst of it. You'll lose atmosphere, you'll lose power, but you'll survive. What about you? Vance didn't answer. What about you? Jenna repeated, and now her voice was shaking. You're not on our ship, you're in that little scout. Where are you going to be when the explosion happens? I'll be right where I need to be, he said. Don't worry about me. He could hear her crying now, not sobbing, but the kind of quiet, furious crying that happens when a child realizes that an adult is lying to protect them. You're not going to make it. You're going to die. Maybe, Vance admitted. But here's the thing about dying, Jenna. It's not the worst thing that can happen to a person. The worst thing is living with the knowledge that you could have helped and you didn't. I made that mistake once. I'm not making it again. He didn't tell her about the Cerberus incident, about the 37 colonists he'd left behind because his commanding officer had ordered a withdrawal, about the screams on the radio that had haunted his dreams for half a decade, about the way he'd woken up every morning since then and looked in the mirror and seen a coward. He didn't have to. Jenna was smart enough to fill in the blanks. Okay, she said. Tell me what to do. The next 14 minutes were a symphony of chaos. Vance flew the needle through the debris field like a needle through cloth, weaving between derelict ships, dropping magnetic beacons on every fuel tank and munition store he could find. Lark fed him real-time data from her hidden sensors, identifying the most volatile wrecks and calculating the optimal detonation sequence. The Kraken was close now, so close that Vance could see it with his naked eye. A swirling nebula of violet light, beautiful and terrible, its magnetic tendrils reaching out to taste the gift's heat signature. 15 seconds to optimal firing position, Lark said. Eli, the cruiser just dropped out of FTL. They're 16 light seconds out and accelerating. You have 3 minutes before they're in weapons range. That's enough time. It's not enough time for you to escape the blast. I've run the trajectory. Even if you detonate from the edge of the field, the shockwave will catch you. The needle's hull can't take that kind of stress. I know. Then why are you still... Because I'm not going to detonate from the edge of the field, he said. I'm going to detonate from the center. The Kraken's already inside the field. If I trigger the explosion from the perimeter, the creature might survive. It's fast enough to outrun a shockwave. I need to make sure it's at ground zero when the field goes up. Lark was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped into something raw and private. The voice she used when she wasn't a pirate or a ghost or a legend. Just a woman who'd grown up in the same slums as Vance and had saved his life more times than she could count. You're not coming back from this. Probably not. Then what do you want me to tell people? What do you want them to remember? Vance thought about it. He thought about his father, dead in a salvage accident. He thought about the Cerberus colonists, their faces pressed against a viewport just like the children on the gift. He thought about Jenna's voice, young and terrified and impossibly brave. Tell them I was the pilot who didn't run, he said. That's enough. He cut the channel before Lark could argue. The gift was exactly where he'd told Jenna to put it, at the edge of the debris field, her bow pointed away from the blast zone, her thrusters burning at full military power. Vance could see her through his canopy, a dark silhouette against the violet glow of the Kraken's magnetic field. The creature was less than 2 kilometers away now, its plasma body coiling like a serpent, reaching for the Orphan ship with filaments of hungry light. Jenna, Vance transmitted. Brace for impact in 60 seconds and listen, whatever happens after that, don't look back. Keep your thrusters at full burn until you're clear of the field. Don't stop for anything, don't turn around for anyone, do you understand? I understand, she said. Then, what's your name? Your real name? I want to remember it. Elias. But my friends call me Eli. Okay, Eli, thank you for stopping. He closed his eyes, opened them. The Kraken was so close now that he could feel its magnetic field pulling at the needle's hull, trying to tear her apart atom by atom. The violet light filled his cockpit, turned his skin the color of a bruise. He keyed the detonation sequence. On his console, a countdown appeared. 10 seconds. He'd placed 47 magnetic beacons on 47 different warheads, spread across a volume of space larger than a small moon. When they detonated simultaneously, the explosion would be visible from 3 systems away. It would look like a star being born. 5 seconds. He thought about his father, about the Cerberus colonists, about Lark somewhere in the dark watching him die. 3 seconds. See you on the other side, he whispered. 2. 1. The debris field became a sun. The shockwave hit the needle like a fist made of light. Vance's harness cut into his shoulders hard enough to crack bone, and the cockpit canopy spiderwebbed with fractures as the heat front washed over him. His console screamed warnings. Hull integrity failing, life support offline, navigation systems dead. The violet light of the Kraken was swallowed by a wall of white fire, and for one endless moment Vance was blind and deaf and floating in a sea of annihilation. Then the needle spun. He lost track of direction, of up and down, of anything except the G-forces pressing him into his seat like a hydraulic press. His vision tunneled to a pinprick. His ears popped and began to bleed. The console's alarm shifted from shrieking to whimpering as system after system failed. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the violence stopped. Vance hung in his harness, gasping. His chest felt like someone had kicked a hole through it. His left arm wouldn't move. But he was alive. Somehow, impossibly, he was alive. He was. He looked at his console. Most of the displays were dark, but one remained. A single readout showing the gift's transponder signal, still broadcasting from the far side of the debris field. The signal was weak. It was flickering. But it was there. 37 life signs. All children. All alive. Vance laughed. It came out as a wet, ragged cough. "Lark," he said into the dead channel. "You still there?" Static. Then Lark's voice, distorted but unmistakable. "You absolute idiot. You beautiful suicidal idiot. The Needle's hull is at 3% integrity. You have maybe 12 minutes of air, and the fleet cruiser is already inbound to investigate the explosion. Can you get me out of here? I can try, but Eli, the cruiser's captain, just broadcast a sector-wide sweep order. They're looking for survivors. They're looking for witnesses. If they find that orphan ship, they're going to execute everyone on board and call it a Kraken attack." Vance closed his eyes. He could feel the Needle drifting, her systems dead, her hull cracked and bleeding atmosphere. He had no thrusters, no communications, no way to warn Jenna. He was a corpse in a coffin, waiting to be discovered. "Then we need to give them something else to look at," he said. "Something that will keep their attention long enough for the gift to escape." "What do you have in mind?" "Me," he said. "My ship's still got a functioning transponder. If I broadcast a distress signal on all frequencies, identify myself as a fleet scout, give them my real name and rank, they'll come looking for me first. They can't ignore a downed officer. It's bad for morale. They'll execute you the moment they pull you out of that cockpit. Probably. But it'll buy the gift 15, maybe 20 minutes. That's enough time for them to reach the edge of the system and go dark." Lark's voice cracked. "Eli, please, there has to be another way." "There isn't. You know there isn't." He waited. The static hissed. Somewhere behind him he could hear the faint whistling of atmosphere leaking through a crack in his hull. A sound like a dying breath. "I'll make sure they remember you," Lark said finally. "All of them. Every child on that ship. Every generation after. I'll make sure they know your name." "Just make sure they live," Vance said. "That's all I need." He activated his distress beacon. The fleet cruiser Vengeance found him 9 minutes later. Vance spent those 9 minutes staring at the gift's fading transponder signal, watching it grow weaker and weaker as Jenna followed his final order. Full thrust, don't look back, don't stop for anything. By the time the cruiser's docking clamps locked onto the Needle's wreckage, the orphan ship's signal had vanished entirely. Jenna had gone dark. She'd taken her 37 children into the black, and no one would find them unless they wanted to be found. Vance smiled as the boarding party cut through his canopy. His left arm was definitely broken. His vision kept blurring, but he was still smiling. The first soldier through the breach was a young lieutenant with a plasma rifle, and the kind of face that hadn't learned how to hate yet. He looked at Vance, at the blood on his face, at the cracked console, at the empty space where the gift used to be, and something flickered in his eyes. "Commander Elias Vance?" the lieutenant said. "You're under arrest for insubordination, dereliction of duty, and aiding enemy assets." Vance tilted his head back against his headrest. He could feel the cold of the Needle's failing hull seeping into his bones. He could hear the distant rumble of the cruiser's engines, ready to take him somewhere dark and quiet and final. "Enemy assets," he repeated. "Those were children, Lieutenant. 37 of them. The youngest was 4 years old." The lieutenant's jaw tightened. He looked at his commanding officer, a grizzled captain standing in the corridor behind him, watching the exchange with an expression that could have been carved from stone. "Children who were never supposed to exist," the captain said. "Children whose families tried to tear the council apart. Children who would have grown up to do it again." "They're children," Vance said again. "That's all they are, and you just let them go." The captain's eye twitched. "We'll find them." "No," Vance said, and his smile widened. "You won't, because I didn't just save them. I gave them a weapon, Lark, Behind the captain, the corridor lights flickered. The ship's internal comms crackled with static. And then a voice, Lark's voice, echoed through every speaker on the Vengeance. "Hi there. You've got something that belongs to me. And I've got something that belongs to you, specifically your entire ship's navigation history, communications logs, and the personal correspondence of every officer on board. Release Commander Vance. Let him go, or I broadcast every secret you've ever tried to bury." The captain went pale. The lieutenant's plasma rifle wavered. Vance laughed. A real laugh, painful and joyful and defiant. "I told you," he said to the captain. "I don't run." The Vengeance let him go. They had no choice. Lark had spent the last 12 minutes worming her way into their systems, copying every file that would embarrass or incriminate the Council. She had enough blackmail material to start another war, and she was willing to use it. Vance floated in the Needle's wreckage as the cruiser undocked and jumped away, leaving him alone in the dark. His air would last another 3 minutes, maybe 4. Long enough to feel the cold, long enough to watch the stars. But before the darkness closed in, he saw something on his dying console, a signal, faint, irregular, but unmistakable. The gift had turned around. "Eli," Jenna's voice crackled through the static. "We're coming back for you. Don't you dare die before we get there." He tried to answer. His throat wouldn't work. His fingers wouldn't move. But his heart, his stupid, stubborn, impossible heart, kept beating. 37 children. 1 broken scout ship. A pirate ghost who'd never let him go. And a star that was just beginning to rise. The end